Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Dalibor Bergam and Reate Production Asgard. So cool that we got this. Why would you review this? They're all sold out. Because they will almost certainly do more. I think we'll see more projects from Dalibor Bergam. I feel like eventually we might see, another round of Asgard in a few different configurations, which I want to talk about. It's certainly worth talking about because this was wildly successful. These were gone very, very quickly. And those of you who have them, I'm sure you very much enjoy them. If you didn't get a chance to grab one, or if you didn't even know that they existed until now you are aware. These dropped exclusively at NC Blade. And while I don't, obviously, Dalibor Bergam is not particularly tied with any one OEM or retailer. It would not surprise me at all if a future run of production Asgards dropped at NC Blade again. NC Blade's I don't have affiliate links for NC Blade. They're just awesome. I really like them. I buy a ton of stuff there. So check them out for sure. I'll have the original listing of this down in the description so that you can at least go and look at it, for specs or whatever information you're wanting to find. Thank you so much to Dalibor himself. He made sure that I got one of these to share with everybody. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. So when I think of Dalibor Bergam, make sure your notifications are turned on for the Metal Complex YouTube channel. I would greatly appreciate it. When I think of Dalibor Bergam, like many of you, I think of his custom work. And I actually forgot to pull it out here. I actually have a custom Dalibor, one that he made himself. And when I say made himself, I mean literally created the materials himself and then created the knife. These are handmade knives. This is a Dalibor Bergam full custom, unnamed, made out of his own commercially pure titanium Damascus and zirconium, which he calls Daltanium, and then he has his own Sanmai, his own sole authorship Sanmai. So the whole thing is sole authorship, and it is an integral. This is probably one of the most impressive pieces in my collection. It's certainly something that I cherish. But that's an example of a knife that I think of when I think of Dalibor Bergam. Now, he does everything in between with his custom knives. He does the plainer and more straightforward aesthetic, which I'm really kind of considering. And he does some of the, it's colorful, but it's still kind of matte. And he does wild and crazy lines, and he does straight lines. I've done a review of this knife, but not in production form, but it's custom form, years ago. You can still go back and watch that. I'll try and link it in the description. But typing Metal Complex and then Asgard will bring it up. Those are the types of knives that I think of, right? So it's cool to get an aesthetic that's much... I would say that this is a far less risky aesthetic in terms of like people who would find it aesthetically pleasing, right? Much more straightforward. And it's nice that we can actually get something made by Dalibor Bergam that's not multiple thousands of dollars. Now, his knives are, for good reason, multiple thousands of dollars. There's nobody else out there doing exactly what Dalibor is doing. It's really incredible, but it's cool that he has allowed some OEMs to create production versions of his work so that people can kind of experience it. I think that's awesome. So I'm so happy that they decided to do this, and I really hope they do it again. I'm going to talk all about this model, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on a potential version 2 maybe down the road. So thanks again to Dalibor for making sure that I got one of these to share with everybody. Let's go ahead and measure it. Overall length of the Asgard is coming in at not quite 8. It's about 7.75 inches. This does feel like a full, like, if I were to pick this up and someone said, how long do you think it is? I'd say it's got to be 8 inches on the dot. It really does feel like a full-size knife. Maybe it's the open ergonomic profile. It's probably, what's throwing me off is the blade to handle ratio. It seems like a 1/4 inch, not the big, like, why do you feel like you would be that specific? I've handled so many knives. I'm usually right. Sometimes I'm wrong. So this is actually more compact, but it does feel like a full-size knife. You pick it up and you're like, yeah, it's a full-size knife, right? 7 3/4 inches overall, with a 3.35 inch blade and 3¼ inches of cutting edge. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the AD10 and my own Excalibur, these are 8½ inch knives. So this knife is smaller, but not by much. It's just really the blade and cutting edge are really not all that different here. It's just got more of a balance between the blade and handle. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. I would say it's closer in size to the PM2, maybe kind of in between, but your cutting edge is actually more. You have more cutting edge on the Asgard. And then finally, we'll put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? This knife is made by Reate, and it is showing through hardcore. Gone are the days where Reate production knives are all tight. Reate, it used to be with a lot of Reate knives, they just were tight, and they just kind of had to break in. This thing just came beautiful. I mean, like, it is wanting to be fall shut. This is a beautifully smooth pivot. Oh my goodness. And it is so clicky. I just love, okay. Most knives click, right? But there are, after you handle so many, there really is a difference. And the little tiny sounds and things, the sound of that detent, the sound of it locking out is so good. I think this probably has to do, oh, by the way, it probably has to do with the fact that it's a titanium integral, and we have the stop here. What's actually stopping it is the frame itself, which is probably giving it a little bit of a unique click. But my goodness, does this just ooze quality. The whole thing just feels very, very, very well made. And I've handled tons and tons of integral knives, right? Integral knives that cost less or more and are, this or that. This is really like top tier. And you might look at this and go, it looks so plain and boring. Like, you're getting excited about it. And you yourself, Complex, you always complain about minimalism being, something that you hate. It comes off as lazy. I think lazy minimalism comes off as lazy when it's just minimalist for the sake of being minimalist and there's no style to it. So I'll reiterate, what I actually say is, there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And the bad way to do it is just to make it minimalist, just to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. Rectangle meets triangle, knife, like minimalist. No, that's lazy. This is not lazy. This is the aesthetic of the Asgard. But we have a really nice transition from a classic knife handle into a Tanto blade. We have that nice curvature there with the contouring, really, really clean. Everything flows together like it's all one thing, almost as if he designed it that way instead of just combining two basic geometric shapes. So yes, there is a good and a bad way to do minimalist. I don't like the word because people tend to lump everything into that same category. If it doesn't have a lot going on, people just automatically call it minimalist. And while it is accurate, the problem is it gets lumped in with a lot of other stuff that really is just not very good. So this has a clean aesthetic. Really like it because it is an integral. You have the pivot showing and nothing else. And then on the other side, you have the pocket clip, the screw for the clip. You've got the other side of the pivot, and then you have the steel lock bar insert. And I will point out, this did come with a healthy amount of additional hardware, including another lock bar insert. So that's cool. Taking a note from Max Ace there, always sending more. But with 2 lock bar inserts, it's pretty unlikely that the average human being is going to outlive the lock bar in this case. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Anyways, the action is really, really good, and you have nice thumb studs with not too sharp on the stepping, not too pointy at the tip here, and just the right size. Because there's plenty of room to access it, we really don't need any scallop. It's just about as perfect a placement for a thumb stud as you could hope for. It's just absolutely perfect. And then reverse flicking it either with the meat of your finger or digging up underneath of it with your fingernail. It's great. The sound of it's great. The D10 is perfectly tuned. It's exactly what you want. There's plenty of access to the lock bar here. The knife will drop down and contact your thumb on an unsharpened portion of the blade, which is exactly what we want. Then a little bit of encouragement, it closes. This will inevitably turn into fall shut action. It's absolutely beautiful. There's something to be said for just a spectacular non-flipper thumb stud deploying knife. I just absolutely love it. But you guys know that because I talk about it all the time. Carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco. Gosh, bless it. Earthquake. Sorry about that. Goodness gracious. Up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's really about the same, but this is contoured. So it really does complement the knife ergonomically. It doesn't feel too thick or too thin. It just feels good, right? It does have one ergonomic issue. I'm sure you can guess. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. So this is kind of in between. And it really is a pretty knife-shaped knife. Like I said, it carries like a full-size knife, feels like a full-size knife. It's a little bit longer than the Spyderco Para 3, but not as tall. Obviously heavier because it's a full integral titanium frame. And it's not quite as long or tall as the PM2. For materials here, we have titanium, obviously. It's an integral, meaning the frame is entirely one piece. This is absolutely a more expensive way to build a knife than two pieces of the same material. This is factually true. Perhaps in the future, as the process for creating an integral becomes more streamlined and maybe even less expensive, it might not always be the case. But there's a lot of weird rumors flying around about how integrals should actually be cheaper to... This is untrue. It does absolutely cost more. We're starting with a block of titanium. A block of titanium, and you are milling that entire block to create one frame. The amount of work involved with a machine to do that versus creating two smaller pieces of titanium that could be and are probably cut from smaller pieces. The amount of wear on the machines, two pieces of material versus one big block of material, it's crazy. It's so much more expensive. Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of other factors that can affect the price, including country of origin, the total amount of material that is machined. We have a really, really nice integral being made by Spyderco over in Italy right now. It's spectacular, right? The total amount of material there is less, and I think I can see how they arrived there. But when you're working with this much material, right, and you're doing it with Reate tolerances and Reate execution, right? Despite the fact that it is done in China, you are still doing a lot of expensive work there. And the price tag needs to accommodate both Reate and Dalibor. So again, I say to you, and I'm glad that most of you are sensible enough to understand this, integral knives right now, especially when we're talking about titanium, someone's going to go, what about a G10 integral? Yep, that's a lot less expensive material, but those do exist. A titanium integral will cost more to create, factually, than the exact same knife being made with two pieces of titanium and a backspacer in between. That's just factually true. So anyways, we have the titanium frame, very nicely done. And then we have MagnaCut over here for the blade. Hand rub satin finish MagnaCut. I think Reate's target HRC on MagnaCut is 62 to 63. It might be 62 to 64 now, but I believe that is the case. If you know better, you can correct me, but I believe that is true. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So that's always something you have to consider, weight on an integral. So there's so much more material in the frame. 4.8 ounces, not bad for an integral, honestly. 4.8 ounces for 3.35 inches of blade on an integral, but the ratios are so good that the balance is right behind the pivot, making this knife not feel very heavy. And honestly, at sub 5 ounces, it's not. I mean, that's fairly typical, right? My titanium Ritter Hogue, for example, weighs 6.3 ounces, and I think this knife in G10 weighs about 4.5, right? My own Excalibur, it's a bigger knife. My own Excalibur weighs 5.8 ounces, an ounce more, right? I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's pretty good. In fact, I had a really enjoyable experience carrying this. Let's do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So your pivot here is a T8. Now, real quick, I wonder why it doesn't spin at all. And I'm wondering, is this side even, no? This one comes out as well, and that means Let's take a look here because the housing for an integral is always a little interesting. I bet that access here into the pivot, I'm just wondering if it's like a bushing kind of setup here. Let you guys take a look. So this whole piece comes out right there. You'll push here and it'll come out the other side, but you won't have issues with the pivot spinning, which is the main purpose of showing this. In 2025, we should have nothing but captive pivots, right? And that is absolutely the case here. You're going to have essentially a pivot system that does not allow the entire barrel to spin freely when you're trying to remove the pivot. So there you go. And then once you kick that out, then that pulls through, and then you can pull the blade and the bearings and stuff out, which you don't have to do, but you can if you want to. I'm just making sure here that we get everything back in and that the blade stays centered up. And you know what? I'm sure it's a good way to test this now that we're in the middle of it, that cranking this down will probably not result in the action changing at all because of how this system is. Yeah, so we're cranked all the way back. It did tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so probably not the rear pivot, but the front pivot here. Let's make sure that we're completely solid. Oh yeah, we're good. So you can adjust. You can adjust it a little bit, right? It's not exactly the same as like the internals of a Spyderco there. But most importantly, when you take the pivot out from one side, you're not going to have it just spinning, which is good. Unless you, it's possible if you use like red Loctite on it, then it's possible that entire barrel will spin. But it doesn't look like, under normal circumstances, you're going to have an issue with that. So that's cool. Anyways, for the pocket clip screw, we have T8. For the lock bar insert screw, we have T8. You're never going to need to take those off. There's no reason to ever take off the pocket clip, right? It's just the blade. That's the nice thing about integrals, is there's really just not a lot of hardware involved with it. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness is it 130? No, it's 141 thousandths. A little bit thicker than middle of the road, the 135. Okay, meat and potatoes time. The Asgard, and a lot of people claim it looks like a lot of other knives. I brought this up in a live stream that somebody says it looks like a Poikilo. There's some Poikilo model that looks similar apparently. This model predates Poikilo as a company, for sure. And I believe the Asgard design itself is substantially older. It does have a profile that is similar to a lot of things that many of us have seen before. It's not like his Unnamed that has a clearly unique profile, right? This is going to look like a lot of stuff, but in particular, that Poikilo model, no, this is far older than that. But it does have good classic lines, and the end result is a very comfortable and ergonomic experience outside of that pocket clip, which is not sharp. Dalibor loves his big long pocket clips, and in and out of the pocket, this was in cargo shorts one day and it was fine. In and out of the pocket and pretty much anything is no problem because of that swoop, and it's gradual and it's soft and it's riding on top of softer material, and the retention on the clip, it looks like it would be incredibly rigid and it wouldn't move at all. I'd say it's about medium, right? No problem in and out of the pants, but my goodness, it is a long clip, about 70% the length of the handle there. And you do feel it. It's not painful, it's not sharp, but you're like, yep, there's a pocket clip under my hand, right? So that might be a problem for some people, but I want to, as much as I like shorter clips, the reason is because of ergonomic comfort. The only time a clip really makes me mad is when I can feel it and it's sharp and painful. That's not what I want. I want to use my knife and not be in pain. Using this knife, I was not in pain. I was aware that it was there. I was like, well, yeah, I can feel it, right? And that will bother some people. Truthfully, I think that he probably could have shaved about 25% of that clip off and still kept it the same shape, but probably would have been a lot tighter, a lot more rigid. So he'd probably have to change up how he mills it, right? Or how Reate milled it in this case. But yeah, you do feel it. This is kind of like a blasted, or like it's kind of like just like a matte tumbled frame. Very, very, very minimal. right? Nothing going on here. That's all intentional. Love how we do the back here. There's just nothing there. Looks good. It would look good with an inlay, but he doesn't have an inlay, and I think it looks great like this. Hand rub satin finish Tanto blade. Some people love Tantos, some people don't. Personally, I think that a drop point blade would work really well on this knife, and it would serve a lot of people who want to use this knife a little more, considering they just need to sharpen one edge and not two individual edges. But the Asgard, originally, to my knowledge, is a Tanto. So perhaps he would consider offering a non-Tanto version of the Asgard in the future. Perhaps not. You know, it might just be like, nope, the Asgard's a Tanto and that's it. Personally, I would love to see this knife in exactly the same blade profile, just without the Tanto. So just curvature from the tip to there. I think that that would just be excellent. Another thing that I would love to see is a little bit of jimping up here. The lock-in on this is good. I don't feel like I'm going to drop it. A little bit of jimping I really would have liked, but it doesn't necessarily absolutely have to have it. That detent sound is so good. God, that's nice. And that click into the open position. If you have this knife, do you agree with me? It's just really clear. It just sounds so good. No lanyard apparatus at all. So sorry, lanyard people. Carry depth. I always forget to talk about this. This is about medium, right? That's fine. The cutout for the lock bar relief is actually 6 individual lanes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's kind of neat. Have steel lock bar insert there. Lockout strength is completely and totally solid. No lock stick. No detent or no pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent in here. Nice clicky detent. Despite taking it apart and putting it back together, we are still absolutely perfectly centered. I would love to see them do that. And listen, Reate can do it. Okay. Let me show you one of my favorite finishes that Reate has ever done. Was on one of their T1000 models. I've got it right here. Reate did this. It's not quite a mirror. It's like a very high polished, stone washed DLC. It's similar to my Hinder. This is a beautiful finish. Beautiful. Would love to see if they decide to do this again. I would love to see a DLC option, and I would love to see that finish applied to the blade, and at least with an option for a drop point. I think it'd be a good idea to continue to offer the Tanto, but to offer a drop point alongside it. I think that'd be great. An inlaid version of this knife would be cool, and Reate does some really nice zircotai. We've seen that many, many times. I think it would be cool just because, you know, Dalibor is known for doing the real wild, crazy, fancy stuff. I think it would be cool if we had some variations of this that were in Damasteel. I've seen Reate do a zero etch like, Dalibor has done himself. He did on my knife. I've seen them do that before too. Some nice high polished Damasteel with zero etch on it, mixed with some beautiful zircotai or some titanium Damascus. I mean, Reate's no stranger to it. I think it would be cool to see that. I think this first release of this knife was very, very good. And honestly, I think the price at $400, again, considering Reate and Dalibor both need to be able to make money on this, right? Neither of them are charities. So there has to be room to manufacture it and for both parties to make a little bit, right? So I think that's pretty amazing that they managed to do that and bring it, down to $400. If they manufactured this knife and didn't want to make any money off of it and didn't have to pay anybody, then yeah, it probably would be substantially cheaper. But it's all of that still has to, come together. So I'm okay with $400, nearly full size, beautifully done and contoured integral, right? In Magnica. That's another thing that, when you're comparing the Spyderco, not only is it less material, but it's also completely flat. There's no contouring. The contouring, the machines responsible for contouring titanium are extremely expensive. All right, and again, that's more extensive machining. Hand rub satin finish, Magna Cut, also not cheap to do. Really good looking, functional, integral. Wish it had some jimping. Wish the clip was a little shorter. That's pretty much it though. Outside of that, this is an outstanding product for $400. If you picked this up for $400, I'm gonna guess you probably really like it. I would love to see them do a run of another 100 with a few more options, including DLC and maybe some inlays, or maybe not, but at least the DLC. And I really feel like doing a drop point alongside a Tanto as an option would go a long ways with a lot of people. And I think people who own the V1 would also be incentivized to own the V2. I would, definitely. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I think this is really cool though. And overall, yes, this is an awesome knife. It's not going to be for everybody and it's really expensive. If you don't care about integrals, right? If you watch this channel thinking that everything that I say is geared towards utility, I don't know how you arrived at that conclusion, right? I've got tons of reviews on knives that cost less than $50 that are great. You can find them in under 75. There's cheap knives I like playlists. Like that's where you want to go for dollar utility for the most part, right? That only represents a small part of my channel. For many people, there are plenty of reasons to spend more than that on a pocket knife if the knife has elements, utilitarian or not, that appeal to them. And sometimes these elements cost money to add to the knife, again, even though they don't add utility. This is a concept that is apparently like, you know, it's on a scale of confusion that it's expansive beyond the entirety of the universe. The way that some people, their brain just explodes over the idea of a knife having elements that it causes the knife to cost more money, but those elements don't relate specifically to utility. They're just like, oh, I can't, my brain, it can't, wah! Have you ever seen a car with shiny rims? Or, I mean, have you ever seen anything that's been embellished in any way that doesn't specifically relate to the task the object was designed to do? It's not that confusing of a concept. We live in a world where we are drowning in that. I don't know why people freak out specifically about knives. I think that's really, really funny. If you don't care about, the titanium integral frame, then obviously this isn't for you because the thing is, at least $150 more expensive than it would be as a two-piece. So that right there, like if you don't care about it, then obviously it's not for you, right? But if you do like titanium integrals, this is a great one. I think it's awesome. The build quality, the aesthetic, everything. It's just got, I bet Dalibor is pretty proud of this one. So that's cool. I like it. If you like titanium integrals, this is one I absolutely recommend to. If you like the premium combination of materials here, then yes, absolutely. For everybody else, probably not. You need to specifically be into all of those elements combined. So thanks again to Dalibor for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.